47 seconds. That's how long the security camera ran before someone cut the feed. And in those 47 seconds, a woman who designed parks for forgotten neighborhoods was left bleeding on cold concrete by people she trusted. But what they didn't know, the man who loved her was about to burn their entire world to the ground. And I'm not talking about some movie revenge. I'm talking about a real billionaire who used every weapon he had to destroy them so completely, they'll never recover. This is that story. Also, stick around to the end because the final scene that happened in that hospital room, nobody saw it coming. Not even him. Okay, so before I tell you about the parking deck, you need to understand who Georgia Callaway was. Because this isn't just some random attack. This was calculated. This was planned. And when you understand what she represented, you'll understand why they wanted her gone. Georgia Callaway, 31 years old, born in Savannah, Georgia, raised by her grandmother, Miss Erline, in a house on Abercorn Street. And Miss Erline had one rule: keep the front door open from April to October. Not for the breeze, for the world. Because Miss Erline believed that a closed door meant a closed mind, and she wasn't raising kids with closed minds. Georgia took that philosophy and turned it into her entire career. She became a landscape architect, but not the kind that designs gardens for rich people. She designed public parks in forgotten neighborhoods, places that had been dead grass and broken benches for decades. And she turned them into spaces where people could actually breathe, where kids could play, where grandmothers could sit without feeling like the city had forgotten them. Because here's what Georgia understood that most architects don't. The geometry of a public space tells people whether they're welcome or just tolerated. Think about that. The way a bench faces, whether there are trees, whether there's shade, all of it is the city communicating to you whether you matter or not. By age 29, she had redesigned 3 major parks in Atlanta's West Side. And people loved her. Community boards wanted to work with her. Neighborhoods requested her specifically. She was becoming the most sought-after landscape architect in the American South. But that success, that's exactly what made her a target. Because there was someone watching her rise, someone who felt like she had taken something that belonged to him. And we'll get to him in a minute. But first, you need to know about the man who would eventually destroy him. Jwan Lim, 34 years old, CEO of Lim Global Holdings. And when I say billionaire, I don't mean some trust fund kid who inherited daddy's money and coasted. This man took over his father's company at 27 and spent 3 years restructuring it from the ground up. He made himself unpopular with all the right people. He kicked out the executives who were getting lazy. He built alliances with people who would matter 10 years later, not 10 minutes later. By 32, Lim Global was expanding into sustainable urban development across 3 continents. By 34, he was one of the youngest billionaires in Korean corporate history. But here's the thing about Jwan that nobody talks about in the business magazines. The man was unreadable. In board meetings, ice cold. In negotiations, he'd sit in complete silence and just watch you squirm until you revealed everything he needed to know. His staff respected him, but didn't understand him, and that's exactly how he wanted it. Professionally. But personally? He had one tell. One thing he did when he was actually anxious, not the managed corporate anxiety, but real anxiety. He folded things, the corner of a report, the edge of a paper cup, a receipt, a napkin, small, precise folds, his hands moving while his face stayed completely still. And if you were smart, you never mentioned it. For 3 weeks before the Atlanta trip, he had been folding everything. Because something felt wrong, and he couldn't figure out what. That instinct? It was about to save Georgia's life. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So how does a Korean billionaire meet a landscape architect from Savannah? At the most boring event imaginable. The Atlanta Green Space Summit, March, 14 months before the parking deck. It's basically a conference where city planners talk about trees and zoning laws. Jwan is there because his American team told him he needs community credibility for his expansion plans. He's sitting in the back, legal pad out, fourth meeting of the day, completely checked out mentally. And then Georgia Callaway walks to the front of the room. She's wearing a yellow blazer. She's got her notes, but doesn't look at them once. And she stands in front of a room full of professionals with way more institutional credentials than she has. And she just speaks. No hedging, no apologies. She tells that room that a neighborhood without trees isn't just ugly. It's a statement. It's the city saying to the people who live there, the budget came before you did. The room shifted. Not the way rooms shift when someone's performing. The way they shift when someone is right. Jwan didn't take a single note. He didn't need to. He found her afterward in the hallway, introduced himself, told her he'd been trying to build what she described for 2 years in Seoul and couldn't find the language for it. She looked at him with that direct gaze she gave everything and told him, the language isn't the problem. The budget approval is. He told her he had the budget. He lacked the language. She considered him for a moment, this composed, precise man in an expensive suit who was looking at her like she'd just said something he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. And she suggested they talk. Within 8 months, Georgia was splitting time between Atlanta and Seoul, designing a green corridor that would wind through Lim Global's financial district, the largest project of her career. And what was building between them wasn't loud. It arrived the way conviction arrives, gradually, then all at once. He always had her coffee ready before she asked. She could read the tension in his shoulders from across a room. They'd sit in the back of cars at night, moving through cities neither of them grew up in, and they'd be completely silent and completely content. He kept every sketch she ever drew, 43 of them, rubber-banded together in chronological order in the left drawer of his Seoul apartment. She didn't know this yet. This detail would matter later, because when she was lying on that parking deck floor with a 12% chance of survival, those sketches were going to be the only thing keeping him sane. Okay, now we need to talk about Marcus Webb, because Marcus Webb is the reason Georgia almost died. And here's the thing that makes this so disturbing. Marcus didn't start as a villain. That's what makes this so scary. He was just a regular guy who got bitter. Marcus Webb, 39 years old, Lim Global's American liaison director for 5 years. Charming, well-connected, the kind of guy every room trusted immediately because he made everyone feel like he was on their side. He was good at his job, not brilliant, but reliably good. And for 4 years, he'd been positioning himself to lead Lim Global's entire American expansion. He had the relationships. He had the institutional knowledge. He had the loyalty record. And then Jwan announced that the American strategy was being built around a community-anchored development model, and that he was bringing in Georgia Callaway to lead it. Marcus smiled in that meeting. He congratulated everyone. He went home, and he sat in his car in his driveway for 40 minutes. Because it wasn't just professional. That's the part he never admitted to anyone, possibly including himself. He had watched Jwan move through 5 years of American operations with the composure of a man who needed nothing and wanted less. Ice cold, completely controlled. And then Georgia arrived, and Jwan looked at her the way he looked at nothing else, like she was the only person in the room he actually saw. Marcus watched that transformation from 6 feet away for 8 months, and he felt, with increasing clarity, invisible. A wound like that, nursed in secret, curdles into something unrecognizable. By month 4, he made contact with Hartwell Capital, Lim Global's primary competitor. By month 6, he was feeding them acquisition strategy, board timelines, internal financial projections, corporate espionage, actual crimes. By month 8, he'd crossed a line so far past professional misconduct that the only direction left was further. The night Georgia was attacked, Marcus Webb was at a dinner across town. Perfect alibi. He didn't hire the guy himself. Hartwell handled that through layers of distance Marcus was careful never to look past. He told himself it was just a warning, a disruption, something to stall the project and destabilize Jwan before the board vote. He told himself it wasn't supposed to go that far. It always goes that far. And what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the man he was trying to destabilize was about to become the most dangerous enemy he'd ever made. Meridian Tower, downtown Atlanta, parking deck, B, 11:52 p.m. Georgia's walking to her car after working late, keys already out, laptop bag over one shoulder, the unhurried stride of a woman who's worked late her entire adult life and made peace with it. Security camera catches her. Then there's a pause. She notices something's wrong. A slight turn of her head. And then the frame goes black. When the feed comes back online, the deck is empty. Georgia's car is still there. Her laptop bag is on the ground beside the driver's door. Her keys are 3 feet away, like something thrown. And Georgia Callaway, 31 years old, the most talented landscape architect in the American South, is on the concrete with a pulse so faint, the first paramedic on scene called it in twice because he didn't trust himself. 12% survival probability. That's the number the trauma team at Grady Memorial was working with when they wheeled her through the doors at 12:34 a.m. And somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, at cruising altitude, Jwan Lim is in the private cabin of a flight from Seoul to Atlanta. His phone is in airplane mode. He has no idea that the number attached to the woman he loves has just dropped to 12. He's landing in 6 hours. Someone in his own boardroom is hoping that'll be too late. His flight lands at Hartsfield-Jackson at 6:14 a.m. His phone connects to the network before he reaches the gate. 17 missed calls. His head of security. His assistant. A number he doesn't recognize. Grady Memorial Hospital's overnight administrative line. He listens to the first voicemail standing in the jet bridge. Alone. With the particular stillness of a man whose composure is the only thing between him and something he cannot afford to feel yet. He's at Grady Memorial by 6:51. He doesn't pause at the nurse's station. He doesn't wait for the attending physician. He walks through the ICU corridor with the unhurried certainty of a man who has made a decision that cannot be unmade. And he finds her room by following the sound of the ventilator doing the work her lungs have temporarily forgotten how to do. She's facing slightly toward the door, the way she always sleeps, like she's still expecting the day to bring something worth seeing. Even now, even like this, it's so completely her that something in his chest breaks quietly and completely, in a way that doesn't show on his face. He pulls a chair beside the bed. He takes her hand, not her fingers, her whole hand, palm to palm, the way you hold something you cannot afford to drop. He doesn't speak. He doesn't fold anything. For the first time in 3 weeks, his hands are completely still. He holds her hand for 9 hours before anyone can persuade him to eat something. And while he's sitting there, his brain is already working. Because he's just connected something the police haven't. And what he's about to do next, it's going to end careers, destroy companies, and send people to prison. The police come at 8 o'clock. 2 detectives. They talk about weather conditions, visibility, the wet surface of the parking deck, unfortunate confluence of a late hour and a poorly lit area. They're very sorry for what he's going through. Jwan listens to every word without moving. Then he thanks them and tells them they can go. They go. He already knows it wasn't the lighting. Because here's what the detectives don't know. 10 days before the Atlanta trip, Jwan's head of security flagged an anomaly. A visitor badge in the Atlanta offices issued under a recycled employee name. Used to enter the building at 3:40 p.m. Exit at 4:12. logged, filed, set aside as a minor irregularity. Jwan connects it now to the pressure he'd been feeling for 3 weeks, to the board vote, to the specific timing of Georgia's attack 3 days after that badge was used. He connects it to the leaked acquisition terms that appeared in Hartwell Capital's counteroffer 2 months ago. Terms that were in an internal document accessed by exactly 11 people. He makes 3 calls before 10 a.m., not to law enforcement, to a private intelligence firm staffed by former intelligence analysts who understand that official channels move too slowly and can be bought. Within 36 hours, they have a financial thread. Hartwell Capital, 2 shell companies registered in Delaware, a wire transfer, a name. And that name connects, through phone records, a shared attorney, and a cash payment to a third party, back to a Lim Global employee whose access to the leaked document wasn't just possible. It was certain. Marcus Webb. Jwan reads the full report sitting beside Georgia's bed, her hand in his, the ventilator keeping its rhythm. He reads it once, sets it down, looks at her face. He picks up the corner of the report and folds it. 8 folds. Precise. Until it's too small to fold again. Then he places it on the table and makes one more call. He tells his contact he needs everything. Every account. Every communication. Every connection to Hartwell. Documented, verified, and ready to move. He hangs up, and then he calls Marcus into the hospital corridor. Not his office, not a conference room. The corridor outside the ICU. Because Jwan understands that geography is power. And there's no geography more clarifying than this one. The woman Marcus's betrayal put in that room is 15 feet away, breathing through a machine, fighting for her life. Marcus arrives within the hour. He comes with an expression he's assembled carefully. Devastation. Professional composure. The particular performance of a man who knows he's being watched and has decided concern is his best costume. He asks about Georgia before Jwan can speak. Says he's been trying to reach him since he heard. Says he hasn't slept. Jwan lets him finish. Then he places the intelligence report on the corridor's small waiting table between them and says nothing. He just watches Marcus Webb's face. What comes apart isn't loud. It's never loud with men like Marcus. The composure lasts about 4 seconds. Then come the calculations. You can see them moving behind his eyes. The rapid, desperate arithmetic of a man assessing how much has been found and what can still be denied. The answer, clearly, is nothing. And then come the justifications. Years of being looked past. The expansion he built from nothing. The promotion that went to an outside hire, to her, to someone who didn't understand the landscape, who hadn't put in the years, who just walked in and took up space that was supposed to be his. And then watching her take something else, someone else, that Marcus had never expected to want until it was no longer available. He says, "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Jwan looks at him for a long moment, the kind of look that doesn't require a raised voice because it has no temperature at all. Then he tells Marcus very simply that he knows, and that the part Marcus will have to live with is the part Jwan is going to make sure he lives with publicly. He turns and walks back into the room, doesn't look back, sits down beside Georgia, takes her hand. He folds nothing. He's past folding. Because what Jwan is about to build over the next 6 days isn't revenge in the normal sense. It's complete and total annihilation. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it. What Jwan builds over the next 6 days is not revenge in any emotional sense. Revenge is hot. What Jwan does is cold, architectural, deliberate. The way a building is demolished when engineers have mapped every load-bearing wall and removed them in precise sequence so the structure collapses entirely, floor by floor, with nothing left to salvage. Day 1. He positions Lim Global's most liquid assets against Hartwell Capital's publicly traded holdings. A short position so precisely timed, so surgically constructed that it'll only make sense to anyone watching after they understand what's coming. Day 2. The intelligence firm delivers a complete documentation package, Hartwell's decade-long pattern of regulatory fraud, cross-referenced against SEC filings, submitted simultaneously to 3 investigative journalists at major financial outlets and directly to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Not leaked, delivered. With a documentation trail so clean, so complete, that there's no avenue for Hartwell to question its authenticity. Day 3. The stories break. Every financial outlet. Same morning. Same documentation. Same inescapable conclusion. Hartwell Capital's stock doesn't decline. It collapses, floor by floor. The way structures collapse when everything holding them up is removed at once. Trading is halted before noon. The chairman is on a flight to meet with the board when the halt comes through. He never makes the meeting. Day 4. The board vote that Hartwell engineered this entire operation to prevent the acquisition that would cement Lim Global's American dominance comes and goes. Jwan is present, composed, in complete control. Day 5. Marcus Webb is arrested on a Friday morning. Wire fraud, criminal conspiracy, aggravated battery by proxy, because the man Hartwell hired has a record, and the documentation connecting him through Hartwell to Marcus's payments is airtight and chronological, and leaves no interpretive room. The arrest is high profile in precisely the way Jwan's team ensured it would be. Press present, charges public, the full paper trail available to every outlet that wants it. There will be no quiet settlement, no private resolution, no version of this that doesn't leave a permanent and public record attached to Marcus Webb's name. Jwan feels none of the satisfaction he might have expected. He goes back to the hospital, sits down, takes Georgia's hand, waits. But the revenge isn't over, because on day 11, someone else decides to make a move. Day 11 of the coma. 2:30 in the morning. Jwan hasn't slept more than 2 hours consecutively in 11 days. He's in his chair, Georgia's hand in both of his, watching the heart monitor trace its patient rhythm. And then he hears the door handle move. The woman in scrubs is Marcus's former assistant, the person who managed his calendar, his building access, his paper trail for 2 years. She lost her position, her professional reputation, and when the full scope of her participation became clear, her freedom, pending cooperation. She's out on bail. She's decided cooperation is no longer her preferred exit. What's in her face isn't rage. Rage is too energetic. It's the flat, quiet logic of someone who's run all the calculations and concluded that the only move remaining is the one she's making. She moves toward the IV stand with focused deliberateness, like someone who has rehearsed this. Jwan stands between her and Georgia without a sound. He crosses the 3 feet before she can process that he's moving, takes what's in her hand, holds her wrist, firmly, not brutally, with the controlled strength of a man who has decided exactly what this moment requires, and nothing more. He looks at her in the dim light of the ICU, at someone who turned proximity to power into a weapon. And he feels, with absolute clarity, nothing resembling mercy. He reaches behind him with his free hand and presses the call button. When security arrives 30 seconds later, Jwan tells them 4 words: test what she brought. Then he turns back, sits down, takes Georgia's hand, doesn't watch them leave, doesn't look at the door. He looks at her face in the low light and listens to the ventilator and waits. And on day 15, his birthday, which he's completely forgotten about, something happens that nobody saw coming. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not even him. Day 15, February morning in Atlanta. Gray sky, thin light. Jwan's been awake since 4 a.m. He'd forgotten it was even his birthday until his mother's message came through at 6. He silenced the phone without reading it. He sits in his chair with Georgia's hand between both of his, and he looks at her face in the early light, memorizing what he already knows by heart. He's afraid, in a way he has no language for and would never say aloud, of losing the ability to read her, of the day arriving when her face is fully familiar but no longer fully legible. He's afraid, in other words, of time. In the specific way people become afraid of it when they understand concretely what it can take. He leans forward, brings her hand to rest against his chest, and he speaks, not loudly, not for anyone, just into the quiet of the room. He asks her to come back, tells her he's right there, tells her he isn't going anywhere. The monitor holds its rhythm, and then, so small he doesn't trust it. Her fingers move. Not a reflex, not the machine. The slow, deliberate curl of a woman reaching for something she's learned over 14 months to find without looking. The muscle memory of a person who has spent over a year learning the exact geography of one man. Her hand tightens around his, her eyes open, not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually. The way light comes into a room when someone opens a door at the far end of a hallway. Slow, then present. She looks at him. He looks at her. The heart monitor climbs one steady note higher and holds there. She looks at him for a long moment with clear, unhurried eyes. The eyes of someone who knows exactly where she is and exactly who she's looking at. And then, in a voice that's wrecked and quiet and the most complete sound he's ever heard in his life, she says 2 words, "Happy birthday." He presses her hand against his mouth. He can't speak for a long time. He doesn't need to. She knows. But that afternoon, the attending physician comes in with a sealed folder. The expression on his face says this is information too large to deliver quickly. Georgia had been 8 weeks pregnant at the time of the attack. The trauma had been severe. The odds, by every clinical measure, had been against them. Against both of them. Against all 3 of them. But the doctor says, with the gravity of a man who doesn't throw the word lightly, the heartbeat is present. It's steady. It's strong. Everything is fragile. Everything requires monitoring. There are no shortcuts and no certainties. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now because we've got more stories like this coming. If this story moved you at all, if you felt anything watching it, leave a like. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this to more people. And comment even if it's just 1 word, because engagement is what makes this whole thing work. But here's what I keep coming back to with Georgia's story. She kept seeing the world as something that could be opened up and given light. And to me, that's the whole point. The world tries to close us down. Fear tries to make us smaller. Trauma tries to convince us we're too broken to continue. But some people keep sketching anyway. They keep opening doors. They keep planting trees in neighborhoods the city forgot. And eventually, something decides to grow.
Stay tuned for more stories dropping soon. Thanks for watching.